It was the summer of 1944, and rural Pennsylvania was alive with the quiet rhythm of small-town life. The war overseas had cast a shadow over nearly every household, but in the little town of Red Hollow, a sense of calm lingered in the air. Birds chirped lazily along the tree-lined streets, and the scent of fresh-cut grass drifted from every yard. Among the town's residents, one couple seemed to embody hope and innocence, Evelyn and Thomas Harper, newly married and brimming with excitement for their future. Their wedding had been modest, held in the small white church at the edge of town, attended by friends, neighbors, and a few family members who had traveled from nearby counties. Evelyn was radiant, her dark hair swept into a simple updo, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of joy only new love could bring. Thomas, a tall, broad-shouldered young man with an easy smile, could barely contain his excitement as he spoke to anyone who would listen about the adventures that lay ahead. The townspeople often watched the couple with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. In a time marked by uncertainty and loss, the Harpers seemed untouched by the shadow of the world outside. They were the embodiment of promise, and their love story gave neighbors something to smile about amidst the grim headlines from overseas. Within days of their wedding, Evelyn and Thomas packed their few belongings into their old SUV and set their sights on the nearby forested hills for a short honeymoon escape. Their plan was simple but thrilling. Stroll through the shaded trails, set up a small campsite near a creek, and spend their nights under a sky so full of stars it felt like a blanket of diamonds. They laughed about the minor inconveniences of traveling with limited supplies, taking pride in their ability to make a small adventure feel magical. The townsfolk waved goodbye, unaware that this would be the last time they saw the couple alive. The forest itself seemed welcoming, yet there was an undercurrent of something strange, something unspoken that lingered in the shadows of the tall pines. The couple joked nervously about the isolation at first, teasing each other about ghosts or wild animals that might be lurking in the woods. But even their light-hearted banter couldn't erase the subtle feeling that the land around them held secrets. Secrets older than anyone in Red Hollow could remember. Every rustle of leaves and distant caw of a crow made the hair on Thomas's arms stand on end. Yet Evelyn reassured him, clutching his hand and promising that the forest would reveal only beauty, not danger. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the forest in shades of gold and crimson, the Harpers set up their small campsite near a gentle stream. They cooked a modest meal over a campfire, talking late into the night about their dreams, ambitions, and the kind of life they hoped to build together. Their laughter echoed through the trees, mingling with the gentle rush of water and the distant hum of crickets. Yet beneath the serenity, the forest seemed to watch silently, hiding corners that no human eye had touched for decades. The stage was unknowingly set for a series of events that would turn their honeymoon into a haunting mystery, a disappearance that would baffle their town for years to come. The morning after setting up camp, Evelyn and Thomas decided to take a long walk through the forest trails, eager to explore the area before the day became too hot. The forest was alive with birdsong and the rustling of leaves, and sunlight poured through the dense canopy in golden streams. At first, the walk was peaceful, even enchanting, as they held hands and joked about the small adventures they had ahead. But as they ventured deeper into the woods, the trees grew thicker, the paths narrower, and the once cheerful light seemed to dim under the towering pines. There was a stillness now that hadn't been there before, a silence that pressed against their ears in the way only untouched wilderness can. Hours passed, and the couple's laughter grew quieter, replaced by cautious curiosity. They came across unusual rock formations, half-buried roots, and small clearings that seemed to appear and disappear around every bend. Thomas pulled out a small camera, eager to capture the beauty of the forest, while Evelyn wandered slightly ahead, her eyes scanning for any sign of wildlife. The further they went, the more the woods seemed to close in on them, the trails twisting in ways that didn't quite make sense. It was as if the forest itself was guiding them somewhere, or keeping them from leaving. Back at the cabin, by late afternoon, worry began to creep in. The Harpers' families had expected them to return hours ago, and when the couple didn't appear, a small search party quickly formed. Locals, armed with lanterns and a few worn-out flashlights, combed the area, calling out their names into the heavy stillness of the forest. Every rock, every tree, every shadow was scrutinized, yet the searchers found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no evidence of a struggle, just an empty forest that seemed indifferent to their panic. It was as if Evelyn and Thomas had vanished into thin air. As the sun began to sink beneath the horizon, the forest transformed. Shadows stretched across the trails like dark fingers, and the once pleasant sounds of nature became haunting whispers in the wind. The searchers reported strange sensations, chills that ran down their spines, and the feeling of being watched from just beyond the tree line. Some townsfolk whispered nervously about old legends of the area, tales of missing hikers, strange experiments, and abandoned structures buried deep in the woods. But these were stories told around fireplaces to frighten children, not real explanations for the disappearance of two bright, young lives. By nightfall, the search was called off, leaving the forest to its eerie silence. The families returned home, hearts heavy with dread and confusion, clinging to hope but fearing the worst. Rumors began to spread through Red Hollow almost immediately. Some said the couple had run off together, others whispered about foul play, and a few even suggested that something unnatural lurked in the depths of the forest. Despite the efforts of local authorities, Evelyn and Thomas were never found, leaving the town haunted by questions that would linger for decades. Their disappearance became the kind of story that townsfolk spoke of in hushed tones, a mystery that refused to fade, and a shadow that would stretch across Red Hollow for generations. Decades passed, and the disappearance of Evelyn and Thomas Harper slowly drifted into the realm of legend. The forest grew wilder, paths once trodden by townsfolk swallowed by overgrowth, and the memory of the couple faded from daily conversation, though not entirely from the minds of a few determined individuals. One such person was James Mercer, a local historian and amateur investigator, whose fascination with Red Hollow's forgotten past bordered on obsession. James spent years combing through old maps, yellowed newspapers, and dusty county records, piecing together fragments of stories about the mysterious forest and whispers of hidden structures built during the war. Among the brittle pages of a 1940s survey, he discovered something that made his heart race: a small, unmarked rectangle labeled simply as Bunker Number 7 tucked away on the outskirts of the Harpers' old hiking paths. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and unease, James assembled a small team of volunteers to investigate the site. Equipped with flashlights, gloves, and a few hand tools, they ventured into the dense forest, hacking their way through thickets and brambles. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the forest itself resisted their intrusion. The further they walked, the air grew colder, and the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves filled their nostrils. Shadows stretched unnaturally between the trees, and the forest seemed to whisper warnings with every creak of a branch or rustle of an unseen creature. After hours of pushing deeper into the woods, the team stumbled upon a concrete wall, half buried beneath moss, vines, and decades of sediment. Its sheer presence sent a shiver through them. This wasn't a natural formation, and it was far larger than anything anyone expected to find hidden in the woods. The bunker's architecture was crude yet imposing, with thick walls designed to withstand explosions, and a narrow steel door barely visible through the debris. James felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that behind this wall, something had waited, untouched, for more than 30 years, and that the mystery of Evelyn and Thomas might finally begin to unravel. As they circled the bunker, examining its exterior, the team noticed small details that hinted at its original purpose: rusted ventilation shafts, faded military markings, and remnants of barbed wire that had once encircled the structure. It was clear this was not a simple storage shed or abandoned cabin. It had been a facility built for secrecy, designed to hide something from the world outside. The realization settled over them like a heavy fog. Whatever happened here, it had been deliberate, and those who had built it had no intention of letting outsiders peek inside. Every step closer to the entrance magnified the tension, as if the bunker itself was daring them to discover its hidden truths. Finally, after clearing decades of overgrowth, James and his team stood before the steel door. It groaned ominously when they pushed against it, resisting their attempts to open it, as though protesting their intrusion. Dust and cobwebs fell like rain, and the smell of stale, moldy air escaped from the narrow cracks around the edges. The team exchanged uneasy glances, each aware that crossing this threshold might mean stepping into a place frozen in time, a place that had witnessed secrets no one was meant to see. With bated breath and trembling hands, James reached for the handle, the final barrier between them and the truth about the vanished Newlyweds looming just beyond the steel door. The steel door groaned under James's grip as he and his team braced themselves against decades of rust and decay. Every push sent vibrations through the cold metal, echoing like whispers through the forest. Outside, the wind rustled the treetops, but inside, a heavy silence awaited, thick, oppressive, and suffocating. The team hesitated, feeling the weight of history pressing down on them, aware that the threshold they were about to cross had remained untouched for over 30 years. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing layers of grime and spiderwebs, while every creak of the door seemed to echo the unspoken warnings of the past. Once inside, the true scale of the bunker became apparent. The narrow hallway stretched farther than anyone had expected, lined with rusted metal doors that hung crooked on their hinges. Dust particles floated in the beams of their lights, giving the air an almost ghostly shimmer. Every corner held the potential for discovery or danger. James's team proceeded cautiously, stepping over scattered debris, broken furniture, and shattered glass. It was as if the walls themselves were breathing, hiding secrets in the shadows just out of reach, daring them to uncover what had been buried for decades. In the first few rooms, they encountered remnants of equipment that seemed more ominous than ordinary. Rusted tools lay on the concrete floors, their purpose unclear but menacing, while brittle journals and folders spilled across tables, yellowed with age. Some contained handwritten notes in hurried, jagged script, detailing experiments, observations, and measurements, cryptic entries hinting at human involvement without fully revealing the horror. The team's unease grew with every step, the air heavier, the silence punctuated only by their own nervous whispers. Even the flashlight beams felt inadequate, casting long, flickering shadows that seemed to twist and writhe with each movement. As they approached the bunker's deepest section, the walls narrowed and the ceilings lowered, forcing them into a claustrophobic corridor. The sound of their boots on the concrete echoed unnaturally, and the smell of stale, damp air thickened, clinging to their clothes and skin. Dust-covered ventilation fans hung overhead, silent and still, but they hinted at a ventilation system that had once circulated more than air. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive, as if the building itself resented their intrusion. Every door they passed tempted them with the unknown, some slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of rusted chairs, decayed tables, and shapes too vague to identify but chilling to imagine. Finally, at the end of the hallway, they came upon a massive concrete wall, partially cracked but still imposing. Behind it lay the heart of the bunker, the place that had claimed the lives of those unfortunate enough to enter its depths. The team worked carefully, breaking away layers of concrete with rented tools, the sound of destruction reverberating like thunder in the confined space. Dust filled the air, stinging their eyes and lungs, but the determination to uncover the truth drove them forward. With each hammer strike, the barrier between them and the bunker's darkest secrets weakened, the anticipation building to a near-unbearable intensity, a moment suspended between discovery and dread, promising that what lay beyond would be unlike anything they had ever imagined. As the last fragments of concrete fell away, the team's flashlights revealed a chamber unlike anything they had expected. The air was thick with the acrid scent of decay and rust, a smell that seemed almost alive, clinging to their throats and making each breath a struggle. Shadows stretched across the room, distorted by the flickering beams of their lights, and the silence was so complete it felt unnatural. What lay before them was not just abandoned, it was preserved in a way that made the past feel immediate, terrifyingly close, as if the bunker itself had trapped the horrors inside, waiting decades for someone to uncover them. The first thing that struck James was the sight of human remains. Skeletons were scattered across the floor, some positioned unnaturally, as though they had been placed for observation rather than left by time. Rusted restraints still clung to wrist and ankle bones, and broken instruments lay nearby, tools that hinted at experiments too cruel to imagine. Among the debris, torn journals, faded photographs, and stained medical charts revealed the grim purpose of the bunker, a hidden site for secret human experimentation. The meticulous documentation suggested systematic work, a deliberate effort to study pain, endurance, and human limits. And the victims were more than statistics. They were individuals, trapped and tortured in silence. James's eyes fell on a folder with names written in fading ink, and then his breath caught. Evelyn and Thomas Harper were listed among the subjects. Pages filled with chemical formulas, physiological measurements, and cryptic notes described the couple in meticulous detail. Their arrival, their reactions to drugs and stimuli, and even the way they resisted attempts to control them. The realization hit the team with a chilling weight. The young newlyweds had stumbled upon this bunker during their honeymoon, and their fate had been sealed the moment they crossed the threshold. Each document, each note, was a testimony of suffering, a record of lives stolen and twisted in the name of some shadowy, forgotten agenda. The room itself was filled with more than physical evidence. It exuded a sense of menace. Rusted cages, metal tables with straps, and remnants of syringes suggested a methodical cruelty that made the hair on the back of James's neck stand on end. Faded photographs pinned to a corkboard showed uniformed men and scientists, some holding instruments that resembled torture devices, their faces blank and clinical. It became clear that the experiments weren't haphazard or small-scale. They were organized, state-sanctioned, and horrifyingly systematic. The air seemed to hum with the echoes of past screams. Or perhaps it was just their imagination reacting to the undeniable aura of death and suffering that permeated every corner. As the team moved deeper into the chamber, they discovered a smaller, partially sealed room. Inside were personal items, a locket, a pair of gloves, a scarf, objects that could have belonged to Evelyn and Thomas. The intimacy of these belongings among the bones and instruments made the horror feel immediate and personal. It was no longer just a story of disappearance. It was a story of human cruelty, a brutal record of lives erased and recorded with cold precision. The team realized that this room was the epicenter of the bunker's dark purpose, the place where the line between science and monstrosity had been crossed, and where the young couple's life had ended in a way that no one could have imagined, leaving a shadow that would haunt the forest for decades to come. Among the scattered papers and decaying journals, James noticed a pattern emerging that sent chills down his spine. Numbers, dates, and coded annotations were scribbled in the margins, hinting at a network of locations and experiments that spanned beyond this single bunker. It wasn't just a secret facility. It was part of a much larger operation. The team began piecing together fragments of old maps, documents, and photographs, slowly realizing that Evelyn and Thomas were only a small piece in a puzzle that involved countless victims whose fates had been hidden from the world. The bunker wasn't an isolated horror. It was a hub, and somewhere out there were more answers, and more victims waiting to be remembered. Tucked away in a rusted filing cabinet, James discovered a set of photographs that made his stomach churn. Some showed soldiers or men in white coats, faces stern and expressionless, holding tools and devices that resembled torture instruments more than scientific equipment. Others depicted individuals restrained or under observation, their expressions frozen in a mixture of fear and pain. Among the images were faint, handwritten notes indicating reactions, physical responses, and even psychological evaluations. The juxtaposition of clinical precision with evident human suffering suggested a horrifying mindset. These experiments were deliberate, calculated, and devoid of compassion. It was a level of cold-blooded organization that made the air in the bunker feel even heavier, as if the walls themselves carried the echoes of what had been done inside. One photograph, in particular, caught James's eye. It was blurry, but unmistakable, Evelyn and Thomas, taken during the first days of their forced captivity. Their faces were pale, their expressions strained, but there was defiance in their eyes. They were clearly conscious of their situation, documenting the horror even as it unfolded around them. The annotations beside the photo detailed observations of their reactions to stimuli, fear, pain, and resistance were all measured with the detached precision of someone who viewed humans as mere objects. For James and the team, this was the moment when the disappearance transformed from a decades-old mystery into a tragic, tangible reality. The young couple hadn't simply vanished. They had been captured, studied, and ultimately destroyed in a system designed to erase them. As they sifted through more journals, the team discovered coded letters and correspondence between scientists and higher authorities. The language was clinical, almost bureaucratic, yet it spoke of human lives in a chillingly transactional way. Subjects were resources, reactions were data points, and outcomes were evaluations. It became clear that this was not rogue experimentation. It was sanctioned, systematic, and carried out with deliberate intent. Each clue connected the bunker to a broader operation, hinting at a conspiracy that stretched far beyond Red Hollow. The realization that Evelyn and Thomas were among many victims amplified the horror, turning their individual story into part of a grim, historical tapestry of secret horrors hidden from public view. Finally, amidst the rubble, James uncovered a set of coded journals that suggested experiments weren't limited to just physical endurance. Psychological manipulation, sensory deprivation, and chemical exposure were all part of the program. Notes indicated meticulous observations of behavior under extreme stress, how fear could break a person, how isolation could warp the mind, and how the human body reacted to unimaginable circumstances. The depth and organization of these records were staggering, painting a picture of a machine-like system designed to experiment on humans with precision and cruelty. For the team, the connections became undeniable. Evelyn and Thomas had uncovered a nightmare too vast and terrifying to imagine, and the clues they left behind, intentionally or unintentionally, were now guiding the living toward the full, horrifying truth. As James and his team pieced together the evidence, a horrifying picture began to emerge, one far darker than they could have imagined. Evelyn and Thomas had not simply wandered into the forest by accident. Their disappearance intersected with a secret program that had been operating in Pennsylvania during the war. The bunker was not only a storage site or hidden lab. It was a calculated trap, designed to capture, study, and ultimately eliminate those who stumbled too close to its secrets. Each artifact, each note, and each photograph painted the young couple as unwilling participants in something far beyond their comprehension, victims of a system that treated humans as objects to be tested and discarded. What made the discovery even more chilling were the personal effects of the couple found within the depths of the bunker. A small locket, engraved with their initials, lay on a dusty metal table. A folded photograph of their wedding day peeked from beneath a pile of files. These intimate items, frozen in time and surrounded by the instruments of their torment, humanized the horror in a way no document could. It became painfully clear that Evelyn and Thomas had tried to resist, had tried to survive, yet the sheer force of the program had been relentless. Their courage, recorded in the journals and their belongings, was both inspiring and devastating, a haunting testament to lives stolen before they could fully begin. The team uncovered one final, haunting artifact, a journal belonging to Evelyn herself. The pages were fragile, the ink faded, yet the words burned with urgency. Evelyn had documented her observations, fears, and desperate strategies to survive. She wrote of Thomas's attempts to shield her, of their whispered plans to escape, and of fleeting moments of hope that were quickly crushed by the experiments they endured. Her writing revealed not only the physical horrors inflicted upon them but the psychological torment as well, isolation, manipulation, and the constant threat of death that wore on their minds day after day. Reading her words, James felt an unbearable weight settle in his chest. This was no ordinary disappearance, it was a meticulously orchestrated nightmare. Further exploration of the bunker revealed that the operation had been far more organized than anyone had realized. Records hinted at other facilities, other victims, and a network of individuals complicit in the experiments. Evelyn and Thomas were only two of many, though their case had gone unrecorded in public history until now. The team realized that uncovering this bunker was like peeling back a thin veil over a much darker reality, a reality where human lives were expendable, where science had been twisted into cruelty, and where secrecy had protected unimaginable horrors for decades. The forest itself, once seen as a serene sanctuary, now felt like a witness to atrocities long forgotten but never forgiven. As the team prepared to leave the bunker, the weight of the truth pressed on them heavily. Every artifact, every skeletal remnant, and every page of notes testified to a chilling reality. Evelyn and Thomas's lives had ended in a way so horrifying it defied imagination. Yet their story had survived through the evidence they left behind. The forest, the bunker, and the decades of hidden secrecy combined to create a tapestry of horror, a narrative that refused to be silenced. The Harpers had vanished, but their story, buried in dust and darkness, had finally resurfaced, a chilling reminder that some secrets, no matter how deeply hidden, cannot remain buried forever. As James and his team stepped out of the bunker, the forest around them seemed to shift, the trees swaying as if exhaling a long-held secret. The air was still thick with dust and memories, and the silence pressed against their ears with a weight that made even the smallest sound, a snapping twig, a distant bird call, feel like a warning. They had uncovered the truth of Evelyn and Thomas, but the discovery raised more questions than answers. How many others had vanished here, quietly, unseen by the world? How deep did this network of secret experiments run? The townspeople would later call it the Harper Bunker, a grim monument to the lives stolen in secrecy. Yet, for James, the experience left a lingering unease that no amount of historical documentation could erase. Walking through the woods at night afterward, he often felt the faintest brush of movement just beyond sight, a whisper of something watching, waiting, as if the forest itself remembered and mourned. Evelyn and Thomas were gone, but their story lingered, etched into the walls of the bunker, and into the collective memory of Red Hollow. Some locals now claim that on quiet nights, when the wind cuts through the pines just right, they can hear faint cries or laughter carried across the forest, echoes of the past that refused to rest. The bunker, once hidden, had become a window into a dark chapter of human history, where innocence collided with cruelty and curiosity led to tragedy. The discovery forced everyone who learned of it to confront a harsh truth. Some secrets are buried not because the world doesn't care, but because the world isn't ready to face what lies beneath. In the end, the Harpers' story serves as a chilling reminder. Even in the calmest towns, beneath the most peaceful forests, shadows of horror can lie in wait, hidden behind walls that time itself has forgotten. And while Evelyn and Thomas may have vanished decades ago, their memory, and the horrors they endured, refuse to be buried. For anyone who dares to explore the forest or uncover the secrets it holds, the question remains: will you leave with answers, or will the darkness claim you too? The forest waits, and it remembers.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.